just a dog. But you don't know my mother was a dingo, and you don't know I like to howl at the moon.
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
Well, the party was nice, the party was pumping.
Hey, yeah.
And everybody having a ball. Until the fellas started name calling. And the girls respond to the call. I have a woman shout out.
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
I see the young people had a ball cause Billy Fountains get out. Get back, Gruffy, bash Gruffy. Get back, you flea infested mongrel. Gonna tell myself I man no get angry.
Hey, yeah.
280 cows calling them K9. Hey! But they tell me, hey man, it's part of the party. You put a woman in front and a man behind. I have a woman shout out.
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
Say, a doggy is nothing if he don't have a bone.
Oh, doggy, hold your bone. Oh, doggy, hold it.
A doggy is nothing if he don't have a bone.
Oh, doggy, hold your bone. Oh, doggy, hold it. Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
I see the young people had a ball cause Billy Fountains get out. Get back, Gruffy, bash Gruffy. Get back, you flea infested mongrel.
Well, if I am a dog, the party is on. I gotta get my groove on, got my mind, I'm gone. Do you see the rays coming from my eye? Walking through the prison, Digimon is breaking them down. Me and my white talk, short, dealing, gassy color. Any caliber do, I think I knew that's why they call me Pitbull. Cause I'm the man of the land, with it to me to do. Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
Good morning. Our opening words today come from author Beth Fowler. Could you love me like my dog? Could you always be thrilled to go on a drive or a run with me? As long as it's with me. Could you smother me with kisses each time I enter a room, even though I've only been gone 30 seconds? Could you never change the way you feel about me? Could you forgive anything and never hold a grudge, especially when it's my fault? Could you love me like my dog? Please join with me in the shared affirmation of mission of the UU Church of Farmington. Seek answers everywhere, include everyone, live with compassion. Good morning, and welcome to the Universalist Unitarian Church of Farmington. My name is Barb Iovan, and I'm part of the Social Justice Committee. We meet the third Mondays of the month at 7 p.m. up in the Marge Brown Room. And with the generous support of this congregation, we're able to do many things that support organizations and people, largely in the Metro Detroit area, but sometimes we do more of a global reach as well. Our minister, Reverend Glenn Farley, our new minister, is out of the pulpit today, and we're fortunate to have with us Dr. Dana Milliken tell us a little bit more about veterinarian care. If you have a joy or a sorrow you'd like to share, please fill out a blue card next to our ushers, Gloria and Denise, and I'll read it later in the service, or simply text me at the number at the top of your order of service on the first page. As we begin the service, we remember that our UU principles begin with our pledge to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We are a welcoming congregation, and as such, we welcome into our community people of all races, sexual orientations, belief systems, and ages. Please check the order of service for other announcements about upcoming events too. We'd like to extend a special welcome to any visitors joining us here for the first or second time today. And we invite you, if you would choose to stand, introduce yourself, and maybe tell us how you heard about UU. Anyone? Maybe next time. Okay. So announcements. There happens to be an announcement from Social Justice. So you might have heard already, this is the time of year we begin collecting backpacks, which we will fill at the end of the year with supplies for guests of the Westland Lighthouse Warming Center. So if you have any backpacks, and we love used backpacks the most, please put them in the bin in the foyer where you enter, and we'll be collecting those till the end of the year. If you have any questions, you can see Joni Tedesco or anyone on Social Justice Committee, and we can help you with that. Are there any other announcements? I failed to check the box back there. Are there any announcements in there? Is there one? So tomorrow night, Monday is George here? Okay. Tomorrow night at 6:30, we will have our first Chalice Circle meeting, and that'll be upstairs in the Marge Brown Room. And I think there's more information about it in the order of service. Right? Okay, good. Sorry about that. I missed that. Sorry. Okay. And rather than our traditional coffee hour downstairs, which we miss, we invite you to stay and chat in the parking lot and nearby on the lawn for the next few weeks, weather permitting. You might want to leave a folding lawn chair in your car for this reason, maybe a blanket. Okay. All right. Any other announcements that I missed? Oh, okay. Okay. Our speaker today is Dana Tedesco Milliken. She is a veterinarian whose career is focused on improving the equity to access of veterinary care. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in biology from the University of Michigan, a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine from Michigan State University, and a master's degree in epidemiology from Texas A&M University. She also happens to be the daughter of social justice member Joni Tedesco and Jim Tedesco. Our Caring Sunday donations today will go to Not One More Vet, nomv.org, and I'll tell you a bit about that later too. Our first hymn today, and the words are in your order of service, number 175, We Celebrate the Web of Life. Please stand as you are willing and able. Please join with me, the Litany of Gathering. The words are in the order of service. This is our sacred time and space. Renew our spirits to explore the mystery and to share our joys and sorrows. With you, I find strength. Together we become bound by love and respect. With me, you can share your deepest self. Together we learn to understand and to forgive. We share triumphs. And they inspire. We share failures. And we share our human nature. We share joy. And it multiplies. We share sorrow. And it begins to lessen. Okay, and I will see if there's anyone that sent me a message. And we have one. Okay, I think this is okay to say who it is. This is from Hope Sorensen, And she says, I have a joy that it was my birthday this past week. I got to video call with my sister and mom, eat Indian food, and went to the Ferndale DIY Art Festival. That sounds really fun. Anyone else? Okay. I think before we do the offering, I want to close again as written in your order of service. If you'll join with me, your joy is multiplied in its sharing. Your sorrow is lightened in its sharing. The stories that are shared weave together to strengthen our community as we care for one another. And before Diana begins, if you choose to make a Caring Sunday offering, please use the envelope enclosed with your order of service and write NOMV on the memo line. And please do not seal the envelope because that will allow us to use it again. Okay. Thank you. Okay. In the spring, we'll kind of have part 2 of this focus on animals, and we'll do a related event where people will be welcome to bring their wonderful pets. But for right now, please join me in welcoming Dr. Dana Tedesco Milliken.
Does it sound okay? Okay. All right. I'd like to start off today by reading a passage from James Herriot's All Creatures, Great and Small. They didn't say anything about this in the books, I thought. I lay face down on the cobbled floor in a pool of nameless muck, my arm deep inside the straining cow, my feet scrabbling for a toehold between the stones. I could see nothing outside of the circle of flickering light thrown by the smoky oil lamp which the farmer held over me. No, there wasn't a word in the books about searching for your ropes and instruments in the shadows. about trying to keep clean in half a bucket of tepid water, about the cobbles digging into your chest, nor about the slow numbing of the arms, the creeping paralysis of the muscles as the fingers tried to work against the cow's powerful expulsive efforts. There was no mention anywhere of the gradual exhaustion, the feeling of futility, and that little far-off voice of panic. My mind went back to that picture in the obstetrics book. A cow standing in the middle of a gleaming floor while a sleek veterinary surgeon in a spotless parturition overall inserted his arm to a polite distance. He was relaxed and smiling. The farmer and his helpers were smiling, and even the cow was smiling. There was no dirt or blood or sweat anywhere. That man in the picture had just finished an excellent lunch and had moved next door to do a bit of calving just for the sheer pleasure of it as kind of a dessert. While many things about the veterinary profession have changed since James Herriot was a brand new veterinarian pulling calves in the English countryside, I think every veterinarian at some point has said to themselves in their career, well, this wasn't in the books. I know I've thought that even after practicing for a decade, occasionally several times in a single difficult day. And every veterinarian recognizes that exhaustion that Herriot describes, that feeling of futility, that far-off panic that threatens to well up and in the blink of an eye erase everything you've learned and every ounce of professionalism that you have and makes you want to throw down your instruments, tear off your gloves, turn from your patient, and sprint into the nearest woods with no intention of returning. But we persevere. We finish the procedure. We save the beloved pet, or sometimes we don't. We speak with the owners and go about the appointments and finish our day. And if we're lucky, we can pack everything from our day into a neat little box and tuck that box away into the cupboard in the corner of our brain so we can go home and be with our family, be functional in society, and return to do it all again the next day. Some of us aren't lucky. That neat little box is actually a bit flimsy, or a cupboard is full of other boxes containing other issues and there's no room for one more. So we can't pack away the stress and the heartache of our job, and then it spills out into the corner and the other parts of our lives, and we just can't escape it. A 2019 study published by the Journal of the American Veterinary Medical Association confirmed what we in the veterinary field have suspected for a long time. The veterinary profession is in the midst of a mental health crisis. Veterinarians are twice as likely to die by suicide than the general population, and female veterinarians in particular are 3.5 times as likely. Looking at the issue of mental health with a wider lens, several surveys of veterinarians have described higher levels of anxiety and depression compared to the general population. In particular, a 2014 survey of U.S. veterinarians found that 9% report serious psychological distress, 31% report episodes of depression, and 17% have experienced suicidal ideation since leaving vet school. That's 1 in 6 veterinarians who have thought about suicide. Why? Why are we here? How in the world could someone who gets paid to play with puppies and kittens all day feel such despair? Let's take a closer look at this profession. For many of us, becoming a veterinarian was a childhood dream. We worked hard to get through high school, to get into good colleges. We busted our butts to get our undergraduate degree, checking off the long list of prerequisites like Physics 1 and 2, which, let me tell you, I've never once had to use in my life, despite what everyone says. We skipped out on so much of the fun and partying that many of our peers got to experience just to get that 4.0 GPA. And during the summers, we racked up our experience hours shoveling dog poo from kennels and washing the bloody surgical instruments, sometimes for minimum wage and sometimes for free. And we took the GRE, and we wrote those stellar personal statements and forked out wads of cash for our applications and sweated through the interviews, and when that vet school acceptance letter comes, it was our dreams made real. So now we're in vet school, and they'll tell you on the first day that getting through vet school is like trying to take a drink of water from a fire hose. If you can make it through the first 2.5 years of didactic training, you're rewarded with another glorious 1.5 years of clinical rotations. Some of these rotations are amazing and fun, and some of them are downright awful, with weeks of 14-hour shifts in the ICU. And for every instructor who is kind and supportive and rooting for you, there are 2 or 3 who are dismissive or uncaring or verbally abusive, themselves burnt out from the profession. But we make it through vet school by the skin of our teeth, and we pass our board exams, and we are shiny, brand new vets. And we are not prepared. Veterinary school teaches you about body systems and diseases and which textbook to look in if you just aren't sure. But it does not teach you what to do when someone places into your arms their bleeding, broken, furry best friend who ran out into a busy street, and they beg you tearfully, loudly, do something, save him. And it turns out that this person can't even afford to meet their own needs, let alone pay an emergency veterinary bill. The role of pets in our everyday lives has evolved tremendously. 100 years ago, most dogs were kept for hunting or herding or protection, and were seldom kept indoors. Today, most dogs are kept indoors for companionship and treated as beloved family members. Cats who were once mostly outdoors to keep rodents at bay are now companions who sleep in the bedroom next to their owners. And with that changing role comes our ability to provide medical care for our pets beyond James Herriot's wildest dreams. These days, the technology and innovation in veterinary medicine is closely nipping at the heels of our human counterparts. Advanced imaging, stem cell therapy, laparoscopic surgery, joint replacements, with a few exceptions, if it can be done for a person, somewhere it's also being done for a dog. And yet, our ability to pay for that care has not caught up. And this, I feel, is at the root of so much heartache surrounding this profession. Because what do you do with that broken, bleeding companion who might have a chance with aggressive care? What do you do for the owner living paycheck to paycheck who is unable to afford their own medical care, doing without small necessities just to make sure they have enough to buy dog food? What do you do when your hands are tied by clinic policy that states all clients are to receive an estimate with half due up front? Because what many understandably fail to consider is that it's not just your pets' lives that depend on us, but the livelihood of our staff and our families too. And you can't keep the lights on and the x-ray unit running when every third client can't pay for their pet's care. And we must also pay ourselves too, because in addition to eating and paying our bills, we have to pay off our student loans. The average veterinarian graduates $157,000 in debt and enters a workforce with a debt-to-income ratio of 2 to 1. That leaves many of us saddled to a job where maybe after a while we feel like we're drowning, but we can't break free because of our enormous financial burden. So we have to charge for the care we provide, and sometimes it's uncomfortable and sometimes it is awful. Because trust me, we want nothing more than to take in every animal that passes through that clinic door and heal them and make them and their owners whole again. So what do? Pet insurance is great, and it has its place among those who can afford it, but most plans are based on reimbursement. So how does that help when your own needs aren't being met in the moment? And do we really want veterinary medicine to head down the road of our healthcare system in its current state, which is strangled by private insurance companies? And the idea that you should only have a pet if you can afford it is privileged and elitist and completely unhelpful in the moment, especially when there are thousands of homeless pets in the shelter. So what do? What do you do when this situation repeats itself day in and day out? Sometimes money's scrounged up from family members, or a GoFundMe is started. Sometimes we do the best we can with donated meds and under-the-table treatment when the boss isn't looking, and we pray that things go well. And sometimes we can't do anything, so the owner just takes their pet home, or we put their pet to sleep, and we just have to keep moving forward. And sometimes people are kind and grateful, and sometimes they are emotional and belligerent and accuse us of not caring and of being cruel. Perhaps because we are a fee-for-service profession, and perhaps because those fees keep rising as the cost of education and licensing and technology keep rising, society's trust in veterinarians is waning. Veterinary medicine is experiencing the same doubt, the same questioning of science that our physicians and our public health system is experiencing. And it does feel like a bit of a slap in the face when your years of schooling and your heaps of debt are brushed aside for Dr. Google and advice from Bichon Lover 71 on the Boston Bichon's message boards. And then there are the trolls and the keyboard warriors who make it their personal mission of the month to tear down their veterinarian with rants on every social media site across the internet. And certainly, there is some degree of self-selection involved in this crisis, because the people drawn to this profession are perfectionists with big hearts. And many of us are prone to spiraling anxiety and depression when stressed, whether in the clinic or at home. These days, the vast majority of vet school graduates are women of childbearing and child-rearing age. So many veterinarians do go on to have families after vet school. And unfortunately, society has been a little bit slow to catch up because in many families, women are still doing the lion's share of the physical and mental work of running a household. So for those of us with families, there's a tension between being there for your family and being a veterinarian, working those long hours and working weekends. And that tension takes a toll not just on us, but on our families too. Most of these issues that I bring up are not unique to veterinarian medicine, but the next issue is, and that is euthanasia. Because of the kindness of veterinarians, so many of our pets will have far better deaths than our human loved ones. We don't have to watch our pets undergo prolonged suffering from terminal, painful, debilitating illness. We can choose to help them along when the pain becomes too great to bear. And after hefty doses of all of the good drugs, our pets can pass in their sleep, surrounded by their families. And it is such a beautiful thing to be able to quietly end an animal's suffering. It's never easy, but for most of us, it's certainly not the hardest part of this profession. The word euthanasia means good death, an end to unbearable suffering. For many of us, it's a daily part of the job. And so when our own suffering, whether physical or mental, becomes too much to bear, some of us naturally turn to death to end that suffering on our own terms. So here we are. We have a very big problem. What are we doing about it? In 2014, the organization Not One More Vet was created after the suicide of Dr. Sophia Yin, a beloved and world-renowned veterinarian and animal behaviorist. Not One More Vet is dedicated to providing mental health support to the veterinary community through education, support groups, grants providing financial assistance, and a crisis support system. Over the past few years, the mission of suicide awareness and prevention has spread to our professional organizations, our vet schools, and our continuing education platforms. When I was in vet school, mental health and well-being weren't discussed. But today, vet schools are finally starting to address this topic with lectures, events, and health resources for students. And today we are all talking about it. Some of us are choosing an alternate career path, myself included. Clinical medicine for me was interesting and fun, and it never ceased to amaze me, the new and creative ways that dogs and cats could get themselves into trouble. I've removed underwear and pacifiers and corn cobs and towels and necklaces and sewing needles and scrunchies and bouncy balls from the intestines of naughty labs and kittens. Once a dog ate a bar of soap. Soap. His vomit was the most pleasant-smelling, sudsy vomit I've ever had the pleasure of dealing with. I've removed all manner of foreign objects from eyes and ears and paws, have spayed and neutered thousands of animals, and have seen unfathomably sick and injured pets make some amazing recoveries. Occasionally, there were days when I felt like a wizard, but there were also many days when I felt like an imposter, or a quack, or a fellow human being made me feel about 2 inches tall. And after a decade, I felt myself growing weary of the inequity between those who can and those who cannot afford veterinary care. But for me, the final nail in the coffin was a drawn-out incident of cyberbullying that began to take a toll on my mental and physical health. So I've left clinical medicine, and I don't know if or when I'll be back. But the amazing thing about having a vet degree is just how many incredible careers you can make from it outside of the clinic. Veterinarians work in research, the pharmaceutical industry, food safety, agriculture, emergency preparedness, and homeland security. I know veterinarians who are medical writers and some who are teachers, and currently I'm working as a consultant with a nonprofit. Those of us sticking with clinical medicine are learning to set boundaries. We are learning to sit down for 15 minutes to eat lunch. We are no longer enabling entitled behavior in our clientele, and we are firing those who are downright abusive. We are referring the end-of-day emergencies so we can get home to eat dinner with our families and to help with homework and to kiss our kids goodnight. We are respectfully declining to diagnose your second cousin's cat by the blurry photo sent via text message at 11 p.m. And we are declining to look at the weird growth on your next-door neighbor's dog's elbow at the neighborhood block party. And I'm going to end today by asking you all for a favor. 2 favors, actually. The first is that if you like your veterinarian and you think they're doing a good job, just tell them. Tell them you appreciate what they do. And this doesn't just go for your veterinarian, but your barista and your receptionist at your doctor's office and your grocery store clerk, and so on. Take an extra 2 seconds to recognize and acknowledge their humanity. Ask how they're doing and listen to the answer, and it could make all the difference in their day. The second favor is that if you don't like your veterinarian for whatever reason, just quietly collect your pet's medical records without raising your voice, without name calling, and without leaving a rant on Yelp, and find someone you do like, someone you trust, because a good veterinary client-patient relationship is built on trust. Now, I'm not saying you need to handle us with kid gloves, and I'm not telling you to go along with absolutely everything we're telling you to do for your pets. Absolutely question us about what we're recommending, and don't hesitate to decline something you aren't on board with. But I implore you to do this as a dialogue that comes from the point of mutual respect between 2 humans who both want the same thing, and that's what's best for their pet. So I had reservations talking about this issue today. First, it's just hard for me to talk about. To get up here today has meant that I've had to spend some time rummaging through a lot of issues and feelings that I'd packed up and stored away to keep moving forwards. And I also worried that this would feel whiny, because after all, the world's on fire, and war is raging, and people are starving, and our healthcare system is collapsing under the weight of a global pandemic that people in this country are refusing to acknowledge. But then I check in with my colleagues, and I'm reminded that life is not a competition in suffering. One group's struggle does not negate that of another group. There is space in this world to acknowledge that we are struggling. And just like everyone else, my colleagues are sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, parents of healthy children, and parents of children with debilitating illness. We are caregivers not just of all creatures great and small, but also of aging parents and chronically ill spouses. We too have had to evacuate our homes and our clinics due to wildfires or flooding. We've lost loved ones to COVID, and we ourselves have died or experienced those long-term complications. We are gardeners, we are writers, we are athletes, we are artists, we are musicians, and we also happen to be veterinarians. Thank you.
Thank you so much for shining a light on our veterinarians. I know we've been hearing so much about frontline workers in the last year and a half. How many thought of their veterinarian? I know because I don't have a dog right now. It didn't even occur to me. So thank you so much, Dana, for shining a light on that. Our last hymn today is number 203. The words are in your order of service. We're just going to do verses 1, 2, and 3. Thank you again, Dana. You reminded me of the time my dog swallowed a Brillo pad laced with ham juice. I was lucky. We were all lucky because he threw it up instead of having to have surgery. We can learn so much from our pets. So in closing. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all beings everywhere be free and happy. May our thoughts, words, and actions in some way contribute to this freedom and toward this happiness. Namaste.
trouble. And I got them too. There isn't anything we wouldn't do for you. We stick together, see it through, 'cause you got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. Some other folks might be a little bit smarter than I am, big and stronger too. Maybe, but none of them will ever love you the way I do. It's me and you, boy, and as the years go by, our friendship